In what began as a light-hearted exchange during a live talk show, things took an unexpected turn when Will Smith tried to poke fun at President Ibrahim Traoré. But instead of reacting with anger or humor, Traoré responded with a calm, powerful statement that struck deep and left Will visibly emotional. The moment stunned the audience and has since gone viral as a shining example of dignity, wisdom, and raw truth. The lights were bright, the studio buzzing. The evening with celebrities talk show had a star-studded lineup that night. On one couch sat Will Smith, Hollywood's beloved icon. On the other sat President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. In a simple suit, calm and steady, it was supposed to be a light segment, fun, friendly banter. The host laughing nudged Will. "So Will ever thought of running for president? You'd be facing this guy." Will chuckled and without malice said, "I'd at least bring some style to the table. No offense, President Traoré, but you look like your tailor gave up halfway." The crowd laughed. Traoré smiled politely. Will wasn't trying to be cruel. It was a joke, the kind you hear often on American late-night shows, but something in the room shifted. Traoré leaned slightly forward, placed his hands together gently, and waited for the laughter to die down. His eyes met Will's, and then, in a voice that was neither angry nor amused, he began to speak. It wasn't what he said that stopped the room. It was how he said it, and what came next would make the entire world pause. "I don't wear power." Traoré began softly. "I carry it." The room quieted. He looked gently toward Will. "In Burkina Faso, there are villages with no electricity, kids who walk miles barefoot to attend class under trees. If I wore a $5,000 suit, I'd be stealing from them." Will's smile faded. Traoré continued, "You make films that make the world laugh, cry, and think. I carry the weight of lives that depend on every decision I make, even the silent ones. If style could fix a broken hospital, I'd dress in gold." Crowd was frozen. No applause, no forced laughter, just stillness. Traoré's words hung in the air, not aggressive, not defensive, but honest, heart-shakingly honest. Will blinked slowly, leaning back. Something had touched him deeply. It wasn't about the joke anymore. It was about the reality behind the man he had tried to poke fun at. And in that brief silence, the cameras caught something rare: tears in Will's eyes. He looked away quickly, but the internet didn't miss it, neither did the millions who would watch the clip on every social media platform. Within hours, backstage after the show, the atmosphere was heavy, not awkward, just quiet. Will sat alone for a moment, sipping water, his mind clearly far away. A producer approached gently. "Okay," he nodded, but didn't speak. The video clip was already online, a 90-second segment titled "Will Smith Humbled by President Ibrahim Traoré's Words." It had reached 1 million views in less than 2 hours, but it wasn't just going viral, it was changing people. One user commented that wasn't just a clapback, that was truth wrapped in grace. Another wrote, "I showed this to my 12-year-old. We both cried." Inside the dressing room, Will finally stood and walked down the hallway to where Traoré was seated, quietly reading a small book. Will took a breath. "Mr. President." Traoré looked up with a gentle smile. Will's voice cracked. "I needed that. Thank you." The two men, one from Hollywood, the other from the Sahel, shook hands, and in that simple gesture, the world saw something far greater than a viral moment. It saw respect. It saw humility. It saw two men from different worlds meeting on the bridge of truth. By morning, the internet was in a frenzy. The clip of Ibrahim Traoré's calm, truth-filled response had spread across continents. News anchors replayed it, influencers reacted with tearful eyes, even major media houses that had rarely covered African leaders were now talking about Traoré. The caption that trended worldwide was simple: "When dignity spoke, the world listened." In Burkina Faso, markets paused. Small radios played the exchange again and again. Farmers, students, and elders alike watched with pride. They saw their president not as a politician, but as a father figure, unshaken, graceful, and deeply human. In the U.S., Will Smith released a short video. "I joked on TV. He gave me wisdom. I've been in rooms with kings and legends, but this hit differently. Music, he wasn't reading off a script. He was humbled and people noticed, but behind the headlines and applause, something else was quietly unfolding. Something Traoré hadn't planned, a message deeper than television, had started planting seeds and hearts. Across the globe, he had unknowingly become more than a leader. He had become a mirror, forcing people to reflect, and soon even more hearts would be tested. She had watched the clip of President Traoré with her mother the night before. Her little eyes sparkled. "Mama, he's not like the others." She scribbled a note with her shaky hand and whispered, "Can we send this to him?" The nurse, touched by the girl's simple hope, posted the letter on Twitter with the words, "She has days left, but she wants to thank her president. Dear President Traoré, I'm sick, but when I saw you on TV, I forgot my pain for a moment. You made me proud, you didn't shout, you didn't laugh back, you just spoke like a real papa. Thank you, I wish I could hug you by noon." The tweet had 2 million likes. Traoré, in a quiet room at the embassy in New York, saw the message and didn't say a word for a while. Then he stood, put on his jacket, and turned to his staff. "Cancel the next meeting. I'm going to call a child." Munay's mother answered the hospital room. Phoned with confusion, "Yes, hello." A warm, composed voice greeted her. "Madame, this is President Ibrahim Traoré. May I please speak to your daughter?" The room froze. The nurse gasped. Muna's eyes widened with wonder and disbelief. The president spoke softly. To her asking about her favorite color, Traoré chuckled gently. "Yes, little one, but more importantly, I'm your friend," he said, voice breaking ever so slightly after they hung up. Traoré sat alone for a while. He looked out the window at the busy American city, but his mind was back home in that small hospital room. Filled with courage that night, he made a decision that would turn the already viral moment into a movement. He wasn't just going to be a trending figure, he was going to be a reason. After the cameras cut, the studio remained eerily quiet. Will Smith stood by the curtain, hands shaking as the echoes of Traor's calm words still lingered in his chest. Few crew members avoided eye contact, unsure of how to process what they just witnessed. "You meant it, didn't you?" Will asked softly, approaching Traoré. The president nodded. "I don't speak to impress. I speak because truth should be lived, not performed." No cameras, no crowd, just two men, one known for his charm, the other for his courage, standing in a moment of raw honesty. Traoré noticed the vulnerability in Will's eyes. "You carry the world's laughter, Will, but have you ever let the world hear your pain?" That simple question cracked something inside the actor. He nodded, fighting back tears. Meanwhile, outside the studio, thousands had already clipped the video. The internet was stirring, but what would happen next wasn't about fame. It was about healing. In Philadelphia, Will's mother, Caroline, watched the clip alone. In her living room, she had seen her son make millions laugh, cry, and think, but never like this. She texted him, "You've made movies, baby, but tonight you made meaning. That man reminded me of your father. Calm, firm, kind. Don't lose this moment." Will stared at the screen for a long time. "You made meaning." He hadn't cried in front of his mother since his teenage years, but now the tears came like a flood. Something in Traor's words had pierced a part of him he thought was buried about. Worth image and being seen for more than fame, he took a deep breath and opened his notes app for the first time in years. He began writing, not a joke, not a script, but a letter to the man who had unknowingly touched his soul. The next morning, Will's? The letter was posted to Instagram with a photo of Traoré standing calmly on set. It read, "President, true, you didn't clap back, you didn't laugh it off, you gave." Exploded. Millions reshared it. Politicians commented, young people cried, parents used it to teach their children. And in Ouaga, Doug Traoré's office received hundreds of letters from across the globe. But one letter stood out. It wasn't from a celebrity or a leader or a journalist. It was from a little boy in Harlem, and the last line simply read, "I want to be calm like you when people laugh at me." President Traoré closed the letter, looked at his advisors, and said, "This isn't just about what happened on TV. Something is waking up on the other side of the world." A 12-year-old boy named Marcus sat on the edge of his bed in Brooklyn. He had been bullied earlier that day at school, called names, pushed, laughed at for wearing shoes with holes in them. His mom made him warm tea, but it didn't help the ache in his chest that night. As she scrolled through her phone, she saw the viral clip of President Traoré speaking to Will Smith. She turned up the volume. Marcus looked up Traor's words, played, "The world does not need louder men. It needs quieter hearts with deeper truths." Marcus froze. He replayed that line 10 times, then he quietly pulled out a worn notebook from under his pillow and wrote, "Dear Mr. Traoré, today I was laughed at, but I didn't scream. I remembered your voice. I think that made me strong." He folded the note, not sure if he'd ever send it, but the act of writing gave him peace. For the first time in weeks, he slept through the night. President Traoré sat in his modest office, scrolling through the wave of messages his team had filtered for him. One email stopped him cold. It was a scanned letter, handwritten from a schoolboy named Marcus. He read it 3 times. Silently, he looked out the window and said quietly to his aide, We lead nations, but sometimes we just need to hold one child's pain. Without hesitation, he asked for a call to be arranged that same evening. Marcus was called to the school counselor's office. His heart raced. Was he in trouble? Instead, he was handed a phone. "Hello, who is this?" "This is Ibrahim Traoré. I read your letter." The boy went silent. He thought it was a prank, but Traoré continued, "You are stronger than many adults. I've met, and I want you to know, you gave me hope today." Marcus cried, "Not the loud kind, the quiet shaking kind, the kind that comes when someone finally sees you." The following day, without cameras or press, Will Smith arrived in Ouagadougou. He wore simple clothes, no entourage, no announcement. When Traoré saw him, he smiled warmly. "I didn't expect Hollywood to come so humbly." He joked. Will chuckled, but then paused. "I came because what you said didn't just touch me, it changed me." They sat under a tree in the courtyard of a local school, where children played, unaware of the history quietly unfolding nearby. Will handed Traoré a folded paper. "This is a list of every apology I owe from my past, from fame, from pain I carried into other people's lives." Traoré read the names, then nodded. "Healing doesn't start when we fix the world, it starts when we tell the truth to ourselves." Nearby, a small girl ran up and gave Will a flower. He knelt and smiled. It was not a grand stage. It wasn't for applause, but it was more human than anything Will had felt in years, and the cameras, they weren't needed in a small barber shop in a dusty town on the outskirts of Ouagadougou. A group of young men crowded around a tiny flickering TV. It was replaying that moment when Will Smith's playful jab turned into silence and Traorés' words echoed across the globe. One of the young men, Idris, wiped his eyes and said, "This is the first time I've seen a president speak with his soul." The barber, an old man who'd seen regimes come and go, nodded slowly. He didn't just speak to Will, he spoke to all of us who have been laughed at for being quiet, for being different on that day, in that humble barber shop. The clip didn't just it transformed. They turned off the TV and sat in thoughtful silence, not because there was nothing to say, but because they had just seen something pure in a world that often felt cold. 2 days later, a handwritten letter arrived at the Burkina Faso Embassy in Los Angeles. It was from Jada Pinkett Smith. She had watched the moment on live television, then watched it again, then cried. The letter was not formal, it was vulnerable. "Dear President Traoré, I don't know if you realize what you did. Not just to Will, but to millions of men watching who've never been told that dignity doesn't mean domination in one moment with no raised voice. You taught the world that calm isn't weakness, it's a quiet form of strength. You have no idea how badly this world needed that message." Traoré read it alone. He folded the letter slowly and placed it in his journal. He then turned to his aide and said, "We don't need louder speeches, we need louder silence." Followed by deeper actions across continents, something strange began to happen. Clips of Traorés's statement were being subtitled into Mandarin, Arabic, French, Portuguese, even Swahili, not because it was trending, but because it felt like truth. Finally had a voice. Universities discussed it, psychologists wrote articles, churches and mosques referenced it. People weren't just sharing the video, they were pausing their lives to reflect on it. Even a popular late-night comedian, who initially mocked the moment, returned on air to apologize. "I thought it was just another awkward talk show moment, but I see now it was history being made quietly." In Burkina Faso, a school dedicated its library to the quiet voice of truth, naming it after Traoré. The moment had evolved. It was no longer about Will Smith or television. It had become a symbol, a turning point, a mirror, and the world couldn't look away. 3 days after the viral moment, Will Smith made an unannounced appearance on a daytime show. In New York, no jokes, no rehearsed speech, just a chair, a mic, and a man who had clearly been changed. His voice cracked slightly. "I've made movies, I've made millions laugh, but I've never had a moment stop me the way he did when President Traoré looked at me that night. It was like he saw right through the performance, not just mine, but the one the world makes us put on every day." There was a long silence. He added quietly, "He reminded me what it means to be a man, not through power, but through peace." By the end of his words, the room was quiet, and a few tears fell unnoticed that same night. Traorés's personal assistant rushed into his office. "Mr. President, it's from Will." The email was short, but raw. "I've spoken with my heart to the world, but I need to speak with yours. I'd like to come to Ouagadougou, not as an actor, just as a man." Traoré smiled gently. "Let him come," he said. "Let him see where real truth grows, not in palaces, but in pain." The next morning, Will landed in Burkina Faso. He wasn't greeted by cameras or red carpets, just Traoré himself wearing a plain shirt, Holding out his hand, the two embraced, no words. Just an understanding that two paths separated by fame and continents had quietly crossed in a moment the world would never forget. On the sixth day, a small impromptu press conference was held outside a local youth center in Ouagadougou. Will stood beside Trop. His voice was steady. This man didn't clap back. He didn't fight fire with fire. He showed me and all of us what dignity looks like when the world expects pride. He paused, eyes shining. If you're watching this, ask yourself, when was the last time you listened? With your heart, Traoré stepped forward and added, quietly, we don't heal by mocking. We heal by recognizing the wounds in each other. The crowd didn't cheer. They just stood silent, moved. The clip went live within 24 hours, over 40 million views, and across homes, offices, classrooms, people cried not for entertainment, but because in a broken world they had seen something pure. Dear viewer, if this story touched your heart, if even one moment made your eyes well up, please subscribe, like, and drop a comment below, not just for the algorithm, but so more people can feel what you just felt. Tell us what part moved you the most. Let this not be the end music.